Hello, I'm Richard Gizbert, and you're at the Listening Post. This week, Pakistan's state of emergency. The general clamps down on the independent media he helped create. Truth as a casualty of war. Are we hearing less news from Iraq because the news is better? Busted by the blogosphere, Egyptian policemen convicted by their own phone video. And what happens when a talk show host fails to do the research?
Do you know who I am?
Welcome back. How does a country under the control of its military get its information? That was the question this week after President Pervez Musharraf moved to limit large parts of Pakistan's news media under his new state of emergency. Commercial television stations, the ones the state did not have under its control, were immediately put beyond the reach of millions of viewers, leaving Pakistanis with state-run television whose reporting is severely restricted. However, the Pakistani print media were defiant, ignoring the limitations General Musharraf imposed on them. Our starting point this week, Pakistan, the news media, and the general's new rules. In the first volley of coverage on Pakistan's state of emergency, the news media played up the media angle.
Independent broadcasting stations were taken off the air, telephone services were cut.
Independent news media remain silenced. Criticizing the president or the prime minister is now a crime.
These pictures weren't broadcast in Pakistan. Under the new security laws, local television stations have been taken off the air.
That's not quite accurate. Pakistan's private television channels haven't been silenced, at least not completely.
All the private channels are still broadcasting. Their distribution on the cable networks has been halted. Now, in the urban areas, in the main cities, maybe 80–90% of households have access to cable, and that's how they watch these channels.
By blocking cable systems, the government has also denied most Pakistanis access to international news channels. But people with satellite dishes can still watch Pakistan's private stations, some of which beam their signals in from places like Dubai, where they set up shop to ensure some editorial independence.
Their beaming stations were placed in Dubai, and it proved right in this case that if, for example, had we been in Karachi or Islamabad, channels would have been shut, throughout the world. There would have been no freedom of expression.
One of the things we've been seeing over the last couple of days is a huge rise in the sale of satellite dishes. The price has doubled overnight. There's also increased sales of radios and even batteries for radios as people dig them out of their cupboards because they haven't been using radio for years.
That's because Pakistan has undergone a private television revolution since about the time General Musharraf seized power in 1999. Up until then, Pakistan had just one TV channel, which was state-run. Now, it has more than 50. That's one of the ironies of this story. President Musharraf cracking down on the private stations that he himself takes credit for helping to create.
I am speaking via the media right now. This is the same media I have given independence to, because I was convinced that the media should be independent, that this is the only way to go forward in a civilized society.
If you listen to his speech, he said it very proudly that I was the one who gave media this freedom. That's a bit of a myth. If you know about media scene in Pakistan, most of the television channels that are operating now are operating outside of Pakistan. Those channels came first, and then came his media policy, because there was no way he could actually stop those channels from, sort of broadcasting whatever they were broadcasting.
And although President Musharraf has tolerated considerable and sometimes unsparing criticism by the private stations, his government has moved against them before, sometimes openly, such as this year's raid on Geo TV studios in Islamabad, and sometimes in more subtle ways.
There was enormous freedom of expression, but there was very little freedom after expression. The moment you have spoken against him, the moment you have been specific, the moment you actually kind of start criticizing this policy, that policy, telephones will actually kind of start ringing, advertisement will be stopped, independent advertisers will be pressurized from the government, So that actually kind of tells a lot about his policy on media.
And I have said many times, media should definitely remain independent, but there should be responsibility towards the state.
And how does the general define responsibility? It's in black and white in his new broadcast law. Under President Musharraf's state of emergency, the media cannot broadcast video footage of suicide bombers, terrorists, and statements of extremist elements which may promote, aid, or abet terrorism. They cannot broadcast any program inciting violence or hatred prejudicial to the maintenance of law and order. They cannot broadcast anything which defames or ridicules the head of state. And the media must ensure that no anchor person or host propagates any opinion or acts in any manner prejudicial to the ideology or security of Pakistan. The government is being much tougher on broadcasters than the print media for good reason.
You know, they do not have problem with newspapers. Why? Pakistan has a very, very low literacy rate. You know, even the largest papers, they can actually claim that they are the largest circulating papers, but if you actually look at their circulation, it's minuscule.
But the electronic media is very easy. There's a person on the screen in front of you, he's speaking, and you get everything from him.
The low literacy rate also limits the reach and impact of the internet in Pakistan. Musharraf's critics are posting videos such as this protest at a Lahore university, but mobile phones are the new medium of choice.
Somebody would listen to the radio and then they'll pick up their mobile phone, they'll call up a friend. So that's how the news is filtering. And when you have such kind of blanket ban, what happens is that somebody starts a rumor and there are about 50 million people with mobile phones, and within minutes the whole country kind of knows something which might not even have happened.
The Musharraf government is also learning from its past media mistakes. Earlier this year, there were clashes between uniformed police and lawyers who were fighting for an independent judiciary. The news footage did not reflect well on the authorities. This time around, there were more clashes involving police and lawyers, but the images had a different look.
Now you don't see policemen in uniform. What you see is in sort of plainclothes people, but they are policemen. But just because they know that this will be shown on TV, so police have these standing instructions: turn up, control these protests, but don't wear uniform, because then you can make it look like a riot.
Private television is still a young industry in Pakistan, intoxicated by its new freedoms and prone in the rush for ratings to youthful misbehavior. Now it's being reeled in, grounded by the general.
I think one of the things you've got to remember is that this huge explosion in liberalization of media, where we're talking about 20, 30 channels that weren't there a few years ago, has happened so quickly that people say maybe there hasn't been proper training for journalists, and that they're having to learn the rules as they go along. Perhaps they need to think about how they present some of the news.
The fact remains that the freedom that the media enjoys has been given mainly by him, and nothing in the world can ever change that. And I don't think any effort to take back those freedoms is really going to work. People would have remembered him much better if he had not tried to take them back. But I don't think the effort to take it back is really going to succeed.
That remains to be seen, as does the future of media freedom in Pakistan. Our Global Village Voices now on the state of emergency in the Pakistani news media.
I think the media is partly responsible for what has been going on recently, but I think everyone has a part to play in it. As far as the media is concerned, they have been projecting a lot of images which are bloody, dead bodies, which are quite unnecessary and need to be supervised. And I think an independent authority or a body needs to be put in place so that there is some kind of responsibility and accountability as far as the media is concerned.
Since the emergency been imposed in Pakistan, the Geo TV and ARY Digital TV, these two channels, these two media channels, they are working day and night, 24 hours. They are giving the news, they are telling and repeating again and again. I don't see any positive, I don't see any constructive role into that one.
President Musharraf give all the freedom to media, and media should be responsible whatever they are broadcasting on the TV. They shouldn't broadcast the dead bodies and the blood and the chopped heads on the TV, because so many kids, they are watching with the parents, and they are right now they are scared as well to go back to their country.
If you've got something to say on the state of the global news media, we'd like to hear it. Email us at listeningpost@aljazeera.net and we'll find a way to add your voice to the mix. Time now for Listening Post News Bites. Turns out that Pakistan is not alone. The government of the Democratic Republic of Congo has also been banning broadcasters, 38 of them. The government there has taken 22 private TV stations and 16 radio stations off the air. The reason given, their failure to comply with the rules of license and their failure to pay taxes. Congolese journalists call this an attempt to elbow out private broadcasters who are sympathetic to opposition groups. The Committee to Protect Journalists recently said in its annual report that it's been a bad year for freedom of the press in Congo. The recent conviction in Spain of 2 Moroccan nationals for the 2004 bombings in Madrid ought to have been big news in Morocco, especially since they were sentenced to a total of 40,000 years in prison. However, Moroccans got very little coverage, if any, of the verdict. The Moroccan news media did carry factual reports while the trial was being heard, but apparently they towed the line when it came to the judge's decision. Morocco calls itself the home of a media revolution in the Arab world, but still has a law on its books requiring the media not to harm their country's image. The bombing was the deadliest attack ever carried out in Europe by Muslim radicals. 191 people killed, more than 1,800 wounded. In Cairo, the verdict is in one of the country's most infamous cases of police brutality brought to light through the efforts of the Egyptian blogosphere. This man, Imad al-Kabir, was physically and sexually abused by 2 Egyptian policemen who were foolish enough to shoot the incident on their cell phone. The video got out and was posted in the blogosphere where it traveled the world. The 2 policemen were convicted this past week and sentenced to 3 years each. Since the video first emerged last year, other Egyptians have also come forward with similar allegations about their police. And there was a testy but funny exchange on CNN's Larry King show this past week. King's guest was Jerry Seinfeld, whose comedy show used to be the biggest thing on American television until he pulled the plug on it in 1998. Seinfeld clearly not impressed by King's failure to do his research.
So you gave it up, right? I did. So they didn't cancel you. You canceled them.
You're not aware of this?
No, I'm asking you.
You think I got canceled? Are you under the impression that I got canceled?
I don't take it so bad.
Well, that's the big difference between being canceled and being #1.
Okay, I'm sorry. We'll be right back.
Jeez.
Coming up after the break, Iraq, casualty figures, and the day that nobody died.